May God open our eyes to see, our ears to hear, and our hearts to love. 3 weeks ago, I began my sermon with the words, "Forgiveness is not denial, enemies are real." Today, those words are again in my mind as I contemplate the devastating violence against praying Muslim people in the terrorist attack on the mosques in Christchurch, an attack perpetuated by a white supremacist. Evil is real. Whatever forgiveness means, it does not deny that. It does not mean that anything about that was okay, or that we don't have to examine what is required of us in the face of such violence. The words of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. have also echoed through my mind in the last 48 hours. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Last night, Claire and I attended Peter and Michael's utterly fabulous wedding reception on the top floor of the MCA building at Circular Quay. It was a wonderful, amazing celebration, full of love and joy. There were quite a number of New Zealanders present amongst the guests, and kind words of sympathy and compassion were expressed by some of the speakers and by many of the people who spoke to us who were horrified about the attacks. On the largest sail of the Opera House, a silver fern was projected. It was one of the many times tears have welled up in my eyes since Friday afternoon. During the ride home, our Muslim, and I could tell that because his name was Mohammed, our Muslim Uber driver took a phone call. We could hear both sides of the conversation, but as it was in Arabic, I understood almost nothing. But I heard the words Fiji and New Zealand. After the call, he told us that a friend who he had known for 25 years in Fiji was one of the people who had been shot in the terrorist attack on the mosque. His friend was an imam, and he had gone to Christchurch from Sydney, where he had just recently moved, to lead the Friday prayers at the mosque and to stay to visit family. The phone call had been to tell our driver that his friend had died in hospital. We told him how sorry we were and of our connections with Christchurch as the city where Claire had grown up and the place that both of us had worked as ministers. We spoke together about our concern about media and political rhetoric that gives permission for hate. I didn't say this to the driver because at that moment what mattered was his grief and loss. But my former congregation of St. Ninians was in Riccarton, the location of the first mosque that was attacked. While I was the minister there, I joined with others to found a group called the Interfaith Forum for Peace and Justice. We supported and encouraged the mosque's first ever open day as the Muslim community in Christchurch sought to develop good relationships with non-Muslims in the city to increase understanding and to reduce fear and mistrust about their faith. During the conversation, the Uber driver said to us, "We are all brothers and sisters." I thought that was incredible grace in the moment. When we arrived home and he dropped us off, we said we would pray for him and for his friends personally affected by the attack. We wished him good night and God bless. Those of you who use the Uber app will know that it lets you leave a message for the driver to compliment them or to say that you've left something in their car after the ride. So last night I wrote a message that reiterated our prayers and wrote Salam Alaikum, Peace be upon you. People rightly condemn politicians' cheap offerings of thoughts and prayers in the face of gun violence and terrorism. And prayers are cheap and meaningless unless we are changed by them, unless we take the love that we have expressed verbally and channel it into action. For right-wing politicians, such words are totally meaningless unless they repent of using migrant and refugee people, especially Muslim people, as pawns for political gain. The perpetrator of the attacks quoted Jesus' words in Matthew's Gospel in his manifesto. His interpretation was a terrible perversion of Jesus' message. As Christians, we have a particular responsibility now to amplify the love of Jesus in the face of hate and violence. So I want to share some thoughts written in a Twitter thread by Amanda Tattersall, the founder of Sydney Alliance. I still have stitches in my hand from surgery, and typing is still not that easy, so I am indebted to Amanda for her writing. She asked the question, how do we respond to the calculated shooting of praying Muslims? The perpetrators sought to amplify hate. Amanda asked her readers to think about how we might amplify love. And in Twitter it was #AmplifyLove. So she said, what about at work on Monday? Leading an Amplify Love conversation with colleagues in a group, where you take time to imagine what pain you would feel if it was people like you, your sporting group, your church, that had been targeted by a violent terrorist gunman. She says, then an Amplify Love conversation might ask, but why weren't you targeted? Why were Muslims targeted? Why? Because it looks like we have a white supremacy problem. And this is the kicker. What are white people going to do to take responsibility for the terrorists in our midst? What if your kids' school had an Amplify Love assembly? They could talk about how our differences are our strength, lift up and love those differences. As a parent, you could help make this happen, I'd say, or as a grandparent, you could help make this happen. Go in and ask your principal. You can support it. And what if you did the same thing in your community organisation? Had the same conversation with your mates at the pub, with your partner, with your kids? What if we all intentionally amplify love? Lots. She says we can't undo what was done, but we can take responsibility for how connected we are. No one else can do this for us. We are the ones who can call out racism when we hear it. We can build stronger bonds by getting to know each other better. That's how we amplify love. And we can take responsibility for those who stand above us, our leaders. In the workplace, in politics, people either amplify love or amplify hate or indifference. If we have leaders who preach hate, we have a duty to find new ones, because that is how we amplify love. And she concluded her thread with a challenge to Twitter readers, who are often the epitome of the keyboard warrior. She says to them, to me probably, reading it, don't just read this and like it. That's not amplifying love. It's not enough. Amplification is about taking this to the conversations that we have every day. Amplify Love is offline, in real time. It's not a hashtag. It's a way of living. So I want to conclude with just some very, very brief reflections on the biblical readings that we heard for today, from Psalm 27 and from Luke 13, about the prophetic activity of Jesus and the cost. Psalm 27 illustrates the holding together of faith and fear, doubt and trust. In order to amplify love, I think we are called to form communities where people are allowed and taught to talk honestly. In response to culture's deep and pronounced need for connectivity and authenticity, we are called to offer safe space, even to people whose lives, views of the world, religions, or clothing style are not the same as our own. Psalm 27 is a breathtaking affirmation of trust in God, even in the face of dangerous enemies. It does not, however, disparage our doubts and our fears. It does not gloss over real violence. It does not minimize pain. It does not minimize injustice. It proclaims in the midst of all that the power of trust and the benefits of doubt in bringing out the best in others and ourselves. Trust in the sacred, working for justice, peace, and love, enables us to do more than we thought that we could possibly do. It goes with us alongside our doubts and our fears. And for Jesus, God's passionate dream, God's compassionate desire and bold determination is to gather God's human children closer and closer in God's embrace and love. That mission and that commitment is at the center of Jesus' work. Like a mother hen, God seeks to draw, embrace, include, and welcome all God's children into the family of humanity that God has intended from the dawn of creation. May we join Jesus in the days and weeks ahead in sharing the good news of a God who seeks not violence or revenge, but who seeks to gather us together under her wings in love. Amen.